everybody, Kimberly here, and I'm excited to keep this top 5 strategy staple games list going. The previous video I made was light strategy games, and now I am in the medium weight strategy games. This starts around 2.65 and it goes to about 3.4 on a scale of 5 for complexity or difficulty as ranked on BGG. These games also last between 60 and 120 minutes. So while the light strategy games were about 45 minutes to an hour, now we're like hour to 2 hours for a game. And I have selected just a bunch of really fun games. Again, I want a variety of mechanics, I want a variety of themes, and cooperative and competitive play. So this list I am just thrilled to share with you. I do have some runners up. I have some games that I just didn't include, again, because there was some overlap with those criteria. And I also have games that I just want to share with you because they're dynamite games. And again, they just missed that. They just missed the top 5. But I will say that the ones I selected will be replayable. They will be those lasting staples, those essential games. They might have opportunities for expansions or for modules that are included that you can add to your game. Any kind of like mods or upgrades. And just again, replayability is key here. That was like my final decision for the top 5. So here we go. We're going to start off with an older game, but boy is it good. It really just captures my attention, and it has such streamlined gameplay with some simultaneous play. It is Roll for the Galaxy. So Roll for the Galaxy has this really nice Race for the Galaxy feel, but with the dice. And on the dice placement and selection, I think, is just really, really cool. So, Roll for the Galaxy, this is simultaneous. Essentially, players are going to get their active dice. Their dice are their workers. They're going to put them in their cup. They're going to shake them up real loud. It's going to be super noisy. Don't play this in a library. And then you're going to roll them and put them down on your shield, behind your shield on the table. And then you're going to assign them to one of these 5 action spaces, what side it rolled. Then you're going to look at those and you're going to say, wow, what do I want to activate this turn? And you'll take one of those dice and then place it on the activation space at the top of your worker space. And that can be any die. And what you're doing is you're saying, I want this particular action to activate this turn. And every player is going to have one of those selected actions. So when you reveal what your choices were, and you take your shield back, you might activate round 1, round 2, round 4, maybe round 5 as well, who knows? But there are going to be some of those actions that are not activated, and if you have any dice in that particular column that doesn't activate, you put them back into your cup. They essentially didn't get used, they didn't get exhausted, and you will have them for next time. But the other ones you will activate, and you will essentially be gaining resources or cards, and the cards are going to give you opportunities for developments or planets, and you put those underneath the existing ones on your player board so that you can build them with the next 2 symbols. So if you've got those diamonds or you've got the circles, those are going to allow you to build the developments based on the number listed as how many dice you need to allocate to it to build it. And players are working towards getting 12. If you get 12 of those built cards, developments or worlds in your player area, that's going to trigger the end of the game. And you do the same thing with the worlds. And the worlds are going to allow you to have places for goods and resources so that you can put dice there to gain those goods and resources to then in the last action ship. And so you're going to be able to ship and gain all the benefits from whatever your card says. This is the basic system, and it's just so interesting and clever and fun. And you have this commerce. You need to really keep in mind the purchase power of getting those used or exhausted workers back into your cup. You need to gain different colored dice because they give you different possibilities for the action and the symbols you need. It's just really clever and it's fun, and there is that luck of the dice, but also the investment that you're really hoping to get certain things. And when players activate actions when you don't, and it's really what you wanted and you were hoping for that, there's nothing better than getting to do kind of everything you want to do on your turn. But there is this kind of assumption or like guessing of what other players are going to do and how you're going to essentially grow your galaxy. I just think it's a really clever, fun system. It's fun, it's super replayable. I even have some of those expansions. I've got the rivalry, I've got the ambition. It's all just crammed into this box and it weighs so much. So I will say that all the games in this top 5, my boxes weigh so much. Maybe I'll give you like the weight of how much each box is, but it's just like crammed full with like the game and then all the other cool stuff with it. Anyway, this is going to start my top 5 list for the medium weight strategy staples that you need to have in your collection. Roll for the Galaxy. All right, I am ready to move on to my number 2 because this is a game that I discovered more recently, even though it's been around for over 5 years. There have been several expansions that I talked about on my channel for this, and I just could not put a Civilization game on this list. I love a good Civ game. I love the tech tracks and the trees and all the decisions that I make to really build up my civilization. So here's the game. This is my number 4. Tapestry. Tapestry has endless play. I mean, this just really nailed it. This is it. Because if you want to play a game forever, there are endless combinations of all the different civilizations and the capital mats, especially with all 3 of those expansions that I have as part of my Tapestry collection. My whole box is filled with all of this stuff. So what players are going to do is they're going to get that civilization that's unique and has something really special. They're also going to get a capital mat that is where they put all their little buildings. And so they have 4 different types of buildings that they are going to discover and uncover and then place onto those spaces. They're essentially building them by moving on these 4 tracks. These are the tech tracks. You've got your science, military, exploration, and technology. So these are the 4 tracks, and each one of the tracks functions differently, and there is kind of like a race to get to a threshold on each of these to gain a special building that you put down into your city tile that covers up the spaces that you need to gain the bonuses once you've got lines and quadrants and all kinds of things covered up. So you're building the city with real 3D buildings. You're moving on these tech tracks. There's a little bit of that race feature. You're also building tiny buildings that everyone all gets, like a certain number. And when you build them, it reveals more of your income that you get. The other cool thing about this game is that players don't, start over in the next round at the same time. They do it when they want to. So players are going to choose at some point to say, I need an income phase. I need to gain more resources. I need to gain more stuff. I need to really activate all of my, base resources. And then you play your turn where you get to essentially choose what you want to do and pay for things. And that's progress on those 4 tracks. When you do that, you get to play a tapestry card, and that keeps track of where you are in the game. So players could theoretically end the game and other players can still be doing things, but it's really about that timing and when you do it and what you're actually gaining from it. It's great. It's so fantastic. I love the way the system works so well, and there's just a variety of cards. So every game that you play is going to be different, especially the kind of technology that you're investing in, and the tapestry cards that activate. It's a beautiful game. The cards and the components are incredibly nice. If you want to invest in a nice quality game that is accessible as a Civ game, a Civ game in 1 to 2 hours, it's not a 4-hour Civ game. This is it. This is your medium weight staple for Civilization games that you absolutely need. Just dynamite. All right, let's move on to my number 3. This game is just steeped in theme, and whatever theme it is, I will tell you it does not skimp on mechanics. So it's got everything. And I will tell you right now, I'll do my best. I'm not big on the lore, but I love this game. It is Dune Imperium. Yes, so this is Dune universe, and so you're going to have all the different faction names and all the different resource names that are in this book and this story and now the movies. But what players are going to do is they are going to vie for faction power, and it's going to be essentially a race against other players to go up on these faction tracks. There's also going to be a conflict and a power struggle at the end of every round, which you cannot ignore. There are intrigue cards that are going to help you in every aspect of the game. And there's also worker placement, where players are placing out workers to do things and go places, but only if they're able to play a card that has the matching symbol of that location, which is where the deck building comes in. So there's just a whole lot going on here to create this nice, juicy decision that players have on their turn. And yes, you do have a personal player start ability based on your hero, essentially. So every player has an asymmetrical start and or special ability that they play with throughout the game, which I think is really cool. So players are either putting out a figure and activating that space as long as they can pay for it, or as long as it's available. If it's filled with this person, you can't go there, it's blocked, much like many worker placements. And if you don't want to do that, or you can't do that, you essentially play down the rest of your cards in your hand and you activate what's at the bottom. So when you play a card, you're kind of saying, I don't want to play it for the bottom stuff, which is the reveal cards phase. So that's a way for you to gain more stuff, even though you're going out for the round. So it's really cool. And then after you do that, you get to buy or invest in more cards. And so that's where you have an open display, and you can essentially invest in those cards and add them to your deck, building up your deck. That gives you the chance to play out workers and then play those matching cards. And players are essentially going to go up on this victory point track. It's going to be the dust, it's going to be the sand, it's going to be the spice. It's one of those things. And if you get into the 10, there's like a highlighted space. If you cross the threshold, that's going to trigger the end of the game. And then whoever has the highest score on that track, that goes up to, I think, 12, you're going to win the game. It's really cool, super replayable. And we have Rise of Ix and we have Immortality. We've got these expansions as part of our box. And so I think this game has tons of replayability and tons of just coming back and trying new strategies and different ways of navigating this game, because there's so much here to just sink your teeth into. So a lovely medium weight strategy game, Dune Imperium. Moving on to my number 2. This game really took, I think, the gaming world by storm by how clever and interesting and engaging it was when it came out by brand new designers. There's a lot to love here in my number 2. It is Lost Ruins of Arnak. Yeah, this is it. There's so much to like here, and players are going to be discovering and exploring this island in a variety of ways. They only have 2 workers that never do the job. You want more workers every time you play around. But I think that limitation is really great because there are all these other things you can do on your turn. And what you do essentially is you have cards, there's a starting hand, but you will be adding to that by purchasing cards and building up your deck. So there's the worker placement to go out. You're going to be discovering things by placing your little feet out in these locations. Out there you can dig at a site, discover a new site, fight guardians, and that's all going to take place in this kind of like, island space in the center of the board. And it depends on where you go, how much it costs for you to get out there. There are 3 different steps or levels of travel. And so you have to keep that in mind as well, which I think is really, really interesting. There's like the walking or the driving part of it, which is ground. Then there's the ships, which is the water. And then there's the airplane token or the airplane symbol. And cards are going to have that on their display. So you have to keep track of your cards because they have multi-uses. There's multi-functions with the cards that you invest in. Now, the really cool thing about the card section, which is at the top of the deck, is that you've got this artifact card with like a cardboard marker that kind of acts as a barrier between that first card and then the rest of the cards, and there are 5 out there. And so those are going to be item cards, and every single round that you play, you move that marker, that threshold, to increase the amount of artifact cards versus item cards. And so that shift happens over the course of the game. It's really smart, it's really intuitive. Players are going to shift their focus from getting those, generating tool cards into those artifact cards, which are going to give them more and more points and more opportunities to get points. There's also a research track down the side, and players are going to work their way up this track in a variety of paths, and you're going to gain bonuses along the way, and then hopefully you can get to the very tippy top, because that's where you're going to discover the archaeological finds, and that's where big points are. This game is great. What you do is you play one action on your turn and any of the free actions, and then it goes to the next player. And so when every player is essentially done or passed for the round, then you're just going to start the next round. So you might pass a little bit early because you ran out of things to do, or you might have a really juicy round. There are assistants, which I think are fantastic. There's this really push and pull whenever you go up against one of the creatures, the guardians, and that's going to give you some fantastic stuff. And the last thing I want to mention is how the cards work. So when you're done with your turn and you used your cards from your hand, you essentially shuffle up those cards and then place them on the bottom of your stack. So all of your cards are essentially staying in somewhat the same order, and it doesn't get to one of those unwieldy kind of deck builders where you're never really going to get that top card ever again, because it may shuffle into the bottom of the deck when you do all the run out of your deck and then you have to do the shuffle again. This one has a really unique system in that way, and I think it's really clever. Tons of theme, tons of mechanics, lots of fun, lots of replayability here, especially with the two-sided board. You're going to have 2 different jungles to explore, 2 different islands to explore, essentially. And yes, there are expansions for this, so yep, definitely got to add that to your box. Okay, so before I get to my number 1, I wanted to share with you a couple of those honorable mentions and runners-up that, again, just missed the mark. I think they're fantastic games. They would make the list, but again, I had some really specific criteria, and I think that, again, some of these might even be duplicates in some ways of mechanics or theme, so they're good recommendations, and if they sound good to you, then definitely check them out. I think the Castles of Burgundy, which is my all-time favorite game, would be a fantastic addition to your staples or your essentials game. I think the dice rolling in there, your personal tableau building with the buildings, but with the central display, kind of everyone vying for, I think is a fascinating gameplay. It is a nice, lovely game, and I just got that kind of super souped up version, so now it looks really nice and squeaky clean. So that would be a fantastic one. If you're not into Roll for the Galaxy, you might be into Terraforming Mars or Ares Expedition. I think those are right in this medium weight strategy wheelhouse. So if you like those, and maybe you're more the card game version of it, you want to do, instead of Race for the Galaxy, do the Ares Expedition. That's the card game version of, and combines that system of Terraforming Mars too. Another one that's fantastic with some of that worker allocation and the hand management is Obsession. I think that's a fantastic game, and again, it's that 1 to 2 hour strategy game. Brilliant. Really like that game. And I'm going to add Rajas of the Ganges to the list. I think that has some fantastic mechanics of the way that the game is triggered, the end of the game, with 2 different tracks that are working their way back across each other. So essentially you are wanting to gain on both tracks that are moving towards each other, and the person who crosses theirs furthest is going to win the game. It has a lovely feature of going down this river and gaining these locations. Just a really dynamite game. So those are going to be some of my runners up. But I am excited to move on to my number 1. This is the number 1 game that I think you could probably play until the end of time. It is a living card game. And yes, my number 1 is going to be a cooperative game. Are you ready? Here it is. Marvel Champions, the card game. That's right. This is my number 1 for the medium weight strategy games I think you have to have in your collection. And you can have any number of the heroes, any number of the villains. You can add whatever packs you're most interested in, so it's super customizable. This game just gives players so much fun to work together to overcome the baddie. And that's really all there is to it. You're essentially going to be playing a hero inside of the Marvel Universe. And you're going to be on your kind of alter ego side, and then you're going to be on your hero side at certain times in the game, again, strategy-wise, because the villains can attack you if they see you in your hero side. And that's something you might be asking for because you're really powerful as your hero. The players are going to have a deck that they will customize, but also they have specific cards to their hero. And so they have all these different strengths and focus that you can hopefully balance out with the players at your table. And I will say that I've played this game the most with 3 players, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, having that kind of, it's like a 3-legged stool of having those heroes that have those complementary skills and traits that, again, suit your team well to overcome whatever your villain is. So the heroes get to act, and then the villains act. And when the heroes act, they can essentially pay for and play any of the cards that they have in their hand as long as they can pay the cost for it. And the cost is the symbol in the bottom corner. And meanwhile, the cost that you need to meet the threshold for is in the top corner. So you pay other cards to play cards from your hand. So there's a little bit of that system where you're not going to necessarily be able to play everything, but hopefully you can get out some of those allies, and you can get out equipment, and you can get out things that are specialized for your hero. And you want to prevent the villains from scheming, because if the villain's scheme comes to fruition or all the players are knocked down to 0 on their health track, the villains win. And this is a game where I think the villains win, kind of like in Pandemic. There are those games where you just let it get out of hand and you just lose as a team. But I like losing as a team together. I really like winning as a team together. And I love, more than anything, trying out and checking out all the different hero packs. I have found so much fun doing that. And I think all the villains in the base set, in any of the expanded, decks you can get, I think the villains function so differently. And I think they're really interesting. So it's not like playing just another same kind of villain. They all have their different flavor and feel, much like the heroes. So I think that there's definitely something to be had for expanding your decks and trying out all the different packs that you can get for it. But it is an endlessly replayable, nice, streamlined, fun, easy system that you spend 1 hour to 2 hours playing, winning together, losing together, whatever it is. I think this is just dynamite. So Marvel Champions, the card game, #1 for me, medium weight strategy games. Okay, so that's going to be it. Write those comments. Tell me what you think. What is like your #1? What's got to be in your collection? Again, that medium weight strategy game. And yes, keep your eyes peeled for my heavyweight strategy games coming soon. That top 5 will be out shortly. All right, everybody. I will see you next time. Bye.